Thank you, Robert, and thanks everyone. So I was told to talk about COP25 and view from Beijing, but I think we'll talk a bit more broadly about what China is doing and what we can expect in the coming year. I think why people are so concerned about China. So as of this week, if you're following the news, so there are 108 countries have said that they will enhance their NDC this year, submit to UNFCCC. So it seems quite interesting that more than half of about almost 200 countries doing this. But the unfortunate thing is that it contributes only about 15% of the global emission. So these 108 countries, they don't include China, that contribute 25%. The US is not included, 11%. India, 6%, Indonesia, 4.7%. All these are not included in these 108 countries. So people are looking at China, what China could do, because China, a quarter of the emissions. So if China could do something, that would be very helpful to everyone. So look at the data announced a few months ago for 2018. So basically, China is overachieving the target set during Copenhagen, that is 2020 target. So basically overachieving, even achieving the upper end of the target. It was 40 to 45%. So that is very good news. So now people are looking at the NDC, the peaking of by 2030, or I mean around 2030 or earlier. So, but the challenge still remains on whether we can achieve or not. There's still, it seems quite positive that China could achieve, with now already more than 45% intensity reduction. So we have 10 more years to go to 60%. Shouldn't be too difficult. But if you look at it, it's not that simple. Because if you look back over the last 10, 15 years, the easiest part already done. So if you look back, it's easier, you just close down the obsolete plants and the small plants. But now what left over is those very tough ones. So that is the tricky point. So also, if you look at it, the non-fossil fuel, so now it's about 14 point something %. So we have about 5.5 or 5.7% more to go. It seems small, but if you look at the amount of electricity generation from renewable energy, so we have to almost double the generation, 1.7 to twice, depending on the total energy demand. So that is not easy. So we need to do everything we did in the last 20 years in the next 10 years. So that is very difficult. So if you compare with Hong Kong, so the amount of renewable electricity generation is thousands times of the total energy generation in Hong Kong. So we need to do it in the next 10 years or so. So before getting into next slide, so I think the other thing would like to highlight is that, so what is the possibility of enhancing the NDC? So we have been having a lot of conversations with a lot of stakeholders in China, mainland China. So for now, the political situation is not so favorable, as the US is stepping back. So there's no momentum. So everybody, I think just now Kara was mentioning the EU-China Climate Summit in September. So everybody is looking into that. How can we all of us work together to push that forward? So we look to COP26, but we cannot wait for COP26. We need to do from now, actually, to start the conversation with all the stakeholders to create this trust among the countries. I think the other thing, over the past few months, especially right before COP25. If you're following, actually a lot of people are quite concerned, or there are a lot of rumors saying that China is reviving a lot of coal-fired plants. So whether that is true, so it is, no one knows the answer, but what I would like to highlight is that so China is now developing the 14th five-year plan. So this year, 2020, would be the most important year for China and for the world. So whatever plan we develop in the coming months will decide what type of development in the coming 5 years. That will decide whether China could peak the emissions earlier or no. Eventually, we decide what level we can achieve by 2050. So on this 2050 points, also, we have been having a lot of conversations. So we talk about 1.5 degree global goal. So, but what is ambition? What is the ambition that we're looking for? So if California is aiming to achieve zero emission by 2050 as a developing country, so we take another 20 years. So that is argument that we need to think about, that everybody is thinking about, because like the US or Europe, so the peak was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So they have up to 50 years, 70 years from peak to zero. Whereas China, if we peak in 2030, that's when we have 20 years to reach from peak to zero. So what is possible? So this is the big argument politically about the ambition. So then what is possible for China in this coming year for the NDC update? We're hoping is enhancement. So how can we enhance? So a lot of people are looking at it. So of course, most people, if we think globally, we're hoping China could peak the emission earlier than 2030. But with the economic situation right now, so at least me personally, I feel it is unlikely for the government to make such a commitment. And second one would be to cap the peak. So that would even more challenging for the government to commit. So then what are the remaining options that we can look to? And we think non-CO2 is something we should pay attention to. And there's more and more traction in mainland China about the potential on non-CO2. So just to remind you that the current NDC focus only on CO2, carbon dioxide. So there's a still big chunk of emission that is from non-CO2, methane and HFC and others. So based on the official data for 2014, about 16% of emissions in China is from non-CO2 emissions. So this is a big amount. It's about 2 gigaton. So if we rank, if this 2 gigaton is a country, I think it's number 6 or number 7 biggest emitting country. So what can we do with this? So we did some work on this. So if based on the current policy, so if we're not doing anything extra, very likely this non-CO2 emissions will increase by about 40% in the next 10 years and continue for another 15% by 2050. But there are a lot of opportunities to do. So if you look at it like methane, HFC, and so on, all these, a lot of things that China is already doing, that we see there is a huge potential for us to pay attention and take some action. So I think this is also quite relevant for the case of Hong Kong as well. So what are the priorities for China in the coming months and years? So I think first what we should, or China is very interested in, is NBS, nature-based solutions. So this why I put this logo here, because there is a very good complement with the upcoming CBD biodiversity COP15 in October in Kunming. So what leadership China could have for this would have a direct implication on the nature-based solution that will lead up to COP26. So this is the momentum a lot of people are looking to leverage, including the September EU-China summit. Second and third one, so you can understand, I mean, you know energy transition, industrial transition, these are the traditional areas that China still focused on. Energy contributes about 80% of greenhouse gas emission in China. Industrial, so if we look at carbon dioxide, contributes about 90% of emissions. So this would be the top priorities for now, for the past, for now, and for future. Sub-nation action is still very important. So since about 2010 or 2011, the government has been very active in implementing so-called low-carbon pilot cities, provinces. So all this will likely be continued, but there are still a lot of conversations in China whether during the 14th Five-Year Plan we've continued with the same type of pilot or we should have a slightly different thing. And emissions trading, I think is slower than most people expected, but it's progressing. I think the other big thing that is a trend that's going on in China is thinking about the co-benefits between environment and climate, considering the restructure of the government that the climate change function moved to the Environmental Protection Ministry, now called MEE, Ministry of Ecology and Environment. I'm going to move faster. So this is the last one. I think the other opportunity we should look to is adaptation. So China, the Minister Li, Ministry of Environment in China, last year actually joined this global platform called Global Commission on Adaptation. So there's more and more traction in China to do more on adaptation. So these are the 28 pilot adaptation projects in Hong Kong. So we're seeing how this one can be scaled up in the coming 5 years during the 14th Five-Year Plans. So I think this is also very, very relevant to Hong Kong, that we may want to think about how to leverage this opportunity. Yeah. Yep. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.